So it turns out my mother had the ability. It ran in her side of the family, as I later learned. She told me that it was that I shouldn't be afraid of it, so I just forgot about it. Then in 2005, I had a puppy, and his name is Buzz. And he tragically passed away at 7 months old when his leash opened and I was walking him, and he ran across the street and he was killed by a car.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So he reawakened all of my abilities. He basically blew the doors off my senses. And he wound up communicating to me in so many ways. He made appearances, he made barks, I heard his nails on the floor, I felt him, he made things move. It was amazing how many things that he did. And as someone who keeps journals, I wrote everything down, and that became the basis of my first book.
Generation X Paranormal.
Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everyone.
I'm Logan.
I'm Nicole.
And we're Generation X Paranormal. Thanks everybody for who's reached out to us on Twitter. We're getting some pretty good traction out there, and we're definitely getting some of you folks coming by on all our socials. So we appreciate that. But yeah, today's an interesting guest because a couple of reasons. One, he's got something about Tombstone, and I'm just going to rattle off here for a second. And we also talk about pets, and that's something that's very near to us. And who we're talking today is Rob Gutro.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Rob?
Yeah. Rob Gutro is an author, paranormal investigator, and a medium with Inspired Ghost Tracking of Maryland. Since he was a child, he could receive messages from ghosts or spirits who have crossed over. As a scientist, he also provides some scientific explanations about how energy is the baseline for the afterlife and the medium that entities use to communicate. In 2005, Rob's late puppy passed and inspired Rob to write his first book and enabled him to communicate with pets. Rob participates in private paranormal investigations, helps ghosts cross over, and has provided countless messages from people's or pets as ghosts or spirits.
Wow.
So there's a lot to get into here.
No kidding. Yeah, we're pretty excited to talk to Rob. So let's
talk to him.
Well, hey Rob, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing really good. Yeah, welcome to Generation X Paranormal.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No, honors all on this side. We've got so many things we're going to ask you for sure, but I think really kind of for kicking off, if you can kind of tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm in my daytime job, I'm actually a scientist. I'm a meteorologist. Oh. And I use that background as a way to explain the paranormal, because everything has a foundation in the science of energy. So in my spare time, I'm a paranormal investigator and I'm a medium. And I'm also known as a pet medium because I connect with pets specifically. And I will tell you that after doing paranormal investigations for 15 years, I would much rather communicate with pets on the other side than people.
I bet.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's thanks for sharing. Kind of, I guess, really kind of starting out in that. We've got we have pets. We've always had them. I know anybody who's had a pet. It's very difficult. Obviously their lifespan isn't as long as ours, and everybody inevitably has to go through, the losing of a loved one. And every single time you go through that, it's like a little piece of you gets taken every single time. But yeah, if you could kind of unpack that a little bit as far as kind of where. Well, first of all, how did you first notice that you were able to do this, and what are some of the things that immediately strike a chord with you as far as from pets themselves?
Well, it actually started with a human, and that was way back when I was a teenager, and I had my very first paranormal experience when my grandfather appeared to me about 7 months after he died, and he scared the daylights out of me. So,
I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
so it turns out my mother had the ability. It ran in her side of the family, as I later learned. She told me that that I shouldn't be afraid of it, so I just forgot about it. Then in 2005, I had a puppy, and his name is Buzz. And he tragically passed away at 7 months old when his leash opened and I was walking him, and he ran across the street and he was killed by a car.
Oh, no.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. So he reawakened all of my abilities. He basically blew the doors off my senses. And he wound up communicating to me in so many ways. He made appearances. He made barks. I heard his nails on the floor. I felt him. He made things move. It was amazing how many things that he did. And as someone who keeps journals, I wrote everything down, and that became the basis of my first book.
Okay. Wow.
Wow.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
I thought it would be helpful for other people to understand how their pets are communicating from the other side. And that's how I decided to write a book. I mean, I never set out to write a book, but I felt it important that it could be healing. And as it turns out, it's been crazy ever since I published those books.
Wow.
I have 4 in the Pets in the Afterlife series.
Okay.
And I have communicated with people around the world doing readings. And what's interesting when I do readings with pets is that they show me the inside of their home where they grew up in. And so I've seen homes in Turkey and Mexico and
Wow.
Germany and all over the world. So
Oh, that's really fascinating. To ask this question, and really it's probably from my own, I guess, lack of knowledge, but pets obviously they don't speak our human language. How do you breach that barrier, or how does that come across?
that's a good question. So there's a number of ways in which pets will communicate with me as well as the pet parent. Yeah, and you're both dog parents, right? So
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you'll understand this. So what I've learned is that we raise our dogs and cats, really, to just the same way we would raise a human child. We teach them well to interact well with others. We take them to the doctor. We take them to school, obedience school. We teach them how to go to the bathroom. They let us know when they're sick. They're very emotional. So we do all the same things we do with a human child. So they understand all these things, and they understand language because we teach them language. They know obedience. They know your names.
Yeah.
They know home. They know car. They know all kinds of things.
They do.
Dr. Stanley Coren is a gentleman that I cite often in my books, and he wrote a couple of books about how dogs think and the intelligence of dogs. He has dogs, so he used them as a baseline.
Sure.
What he learned is that they have the intelligence of a 3 to 5-year-old child.
Okay.
So think about when a 3 to 5-year-old child on the other side is trying to communicate with somebody.
Right.
And what I do find interesting is that sometimes I'll be doing a reading and suddenly the dog or cat will switch the subject.
Right.
And then go back to the subject. It's like squirrel.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
I have touch with that emotion.
Yeah, I was doing a reading, and a dog was talking about his favorite spot, and then suddenly, he said ice cream. I love going for ice cream with mom and dad, and I'm like, let's go back to your favorite spot.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. So they can convey words, and when they communicate with me, I look at a picture and with their name, and they will convey images to me, and they will also convey words, the words that they learned.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess I've always wondered about that because, I've heard of other mediums that have that ability, but I guess that's always the question that really, I really had a hard time. And you're absolutely right. Our dogs talk to us nonstop. In fact, just before we started our show, they were speaking. They wanted to go outside all too loudly to us. So
Don't say that word too loud. They're right here.
They are here. Exactly. Whoops.
Yep.
But and yeah, we are definitely and I don't even say guilty because anybody that knows us, our pets are definitely like our kids. So
They are kids. Yes.
But yeah, with I guess. Another thing I kind of am curious about, and maybe this tells a little bit about us, and it is kind of what it is, but we've lost some pets recently, and we decided to keep their remains as far as their cremains. They were cremated. I think largely because, we always want to honor our pets, like we said, like our own family. Do you find that similar, I guess, to human or even whatever paranormal behavior, do you think that adds to any of it, or does that, because obviously we still have them in somewhat body form. I mean, I guess it's not really body form, but
It's
because they're
physical
here.
form.
yeah, physical form.
Yeah.
But,
so I have the ashes of my 4 dogs that have passed.
Okay.
Okay.
And I set up a little display with a picture of each one of them, their favorite toy, and their collars with their tags. So everything's all together.
That's similar to what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as for to adding to visits, they are able to connect to it because it's their remnants, if you will. But the only time I've found that pets will actually visit us is right after they pass to let us know that they're okay. And they'll do it in a number of ways. Dreams being the easiest way. And dreams are sometimes difficult to achieve for them if we are grieving so hard because grief blocks dreams.
Okay.
So right after they pass, birthdays, their birthday, your birthdays, anniversaries, the anniversary of their adoption, the anniversary of their passing, or holidays. And the reason they visit those times, which are just like people, is because they can read the emotional energy that we output during those times, and they know our emotional energy is elevated. So they want to come and acknowledge that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That we always feel like they're around at Christmas because we usually have an ornament, of each one that's passed that we got while they were alive. And so when you're taking it out of the box and you're hanging on the tree, that emotion connects. So that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, one Christmas after our dachshund Franklin passed, he used to like to knock off the bulbs on the lower part of the tree because he was a dachshund.
Yep.
And sure enough, we saw it come right off the tree. He had passed. There was nobody near the tree. We saw it come right off the tree, and we knew it was him.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and it's very touching because, anybody who's owned a pet has gone through that. So I guess another question I have is when you make or have made that decision to say goodbye to a loved one, does that process, when you speak to pets, does that, or any kind of a message they give, are they usually cognizant of that time, or do they ever make reference to that time? Or
They do, and they're often very grateful that we found the courage to help them cross over. It also means that we have learned the lesson that they are supposed to teach us, which is unconditional love. Because had we not learned that lesson, we would not have that courage to be unselfish enough to help them pass out of pain.
Okay.
So I always get a thank you, like either a scratching of a paw or like a kiss or something from the other side whenever that happens. One thing I want to mention about passing too that I've learned is that people should not feel guilty if their pet passes when they're not home. And the reason is that our pets make a conscious choice just like we do as humans. Sometimes they will pass when you're not around on purpose because they know it will be the last thing that you see. And you would never be able to get over that. You wouldn't be able to get it out of your mind. And they're conscious of that. My own mother did that. When she had a stroke, my brothers and I were at the hospital 24/7 for 3 days. When I actually when I got up there, it was on the third day because I lived 400 miles away and the doctor said she's in a coma, she's not coming out of it. So take your time. When I got up there, my dad, who had died 5 years before, came through. He came into the room holding her dog, her favorite dog. And he said, Rob, tell your brothers that Mom wants them to leave. She wants to pass without them here. I said, okay. And she said, also tell her that I have Gigi, her dog Gigi, with me because she doesn't believe me. And she said she's not passing unless Gigi is waiting for her. So, sure enough, my brothers left. 5 hours later, my mother passed.
Wow.
So pets make that same decision. So don't feel guilty if you're not there.
That's very comforting.
Yeah, that's good to know for people because I know that's the most devastating.
Very devastating. And it is difficult to watch. We've.
I mean, thankfully we haven't had that happen, but we've had to put down 3. So
yeah. So and I'm glad you shared that because any pet owner that's been through that knows how excruciating that pain is.
You want to be selfless, but you also feel guilty at the same time, and it goes back and forth.
And it sure does.
Yes.
So, kind of, I guess, pivoting a little bit, and I appreciate that about pets. With being very pet friendly and show, and being that we're animal lovers, it was something we definitely wanted to talk to you about. It's so unique. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Sure.
Kind of, I guess, pivoting a little bit, kind of starting on I guess your 11th book was published in February, I believe February 24th, Ghosts of Ireland on Medium's Vacation, I believe.
Yes,
and
it was.
I think what I want to ask, knowing a little bit about it, did you go to Ireland purposely to find hauntings, or was that kind of serendipitous?
And the answer is a big heck no. I did not. I went for vacation.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to go to Ireland. And so myself and my husband decided to make the trip. We had it planned by a travel agent. And they put together a great trip, starting from Dublin, going all the way around the island, and then back to Dublin.
Okay.
So I had no idea where we were going. I just said, okay, you work with them and I'll just go because I just want a great vacation. So I did not go with the idea of encountering ghosts. Same thing happened, by the way, when I went to England in 2012 and 2013. It's just that wherever I go, wherever there is a ghost, they want to communicate with me. Because ghosts can sense the energy of a living person, and they know who can communicate with them versus who can't.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I'm in touch with that emotion a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have those feelings when I go in places, and it's something that I've been learning. I'm a little more sensitive than I guess I thought I was. I still am and was a very big skeptic. So, it's one of those where I'm still trying to wrestle with it. But yeah.
Well, it was a challenge. So England was the first time I went somewhere out of the country, and I was just bombarded with dead people. And the very first ghost I saw in England was a woman that was dressed in 1600s garb, and she was walking across a courtyard in the remnants of a castle. There was a remnant, a castle that we were walking by. There was only the tower left of this particular castle. I think it's Whitehall Palace. Okay. And I turned and I said, "Wow, look at that woman. She's in costume, period costume." And my husband's like, "There's nobody there." So
wow.
I always carry a diary when I travel. I immediately sketched her out. I sketched the dress that she was wearing. When I got home, I was able to find that dress online from the 1600s.
Were you really?
And
wow.
that style of dress. And it blew my mind.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, to have that...
to actually be able to find it.
Yeah, that cooperation of this is not only did you have that happen to you, but by the way, you can buy that
There's
dress
a big confirmation.
on Amazon for X amount of money.
Well, I think it was in a museum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. It's probably way too valuable to be on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting because, we've spoken to a few people, more, with being in England and especially like Ryan O'Neill. I don't know if you're familiar with him
Scotland.
in Scotland, but, we spoke with him pretty at length with just the fact that, in America, we're a very young country. We're not, we haven't been around as long as obviously in Europe, but in the UK. So there's so much history there that it would almost be ludicrous, especially being, sensitive going over there. And then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, big megaphone is coming right at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's so many. And when I went to England as well as Ireland, I met ghosts from all different time periods.
Okay. Yeah, I would assume that would probably be the...
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And that brings up a point. When we speak to some folks, and especially like if, I hate to say it, when we watch some of the TV shows where they have, an SB7 box or all those sort of things.
Yeah.
I often wonder, they always speak to them in English. And I always find that really odd because, like, if they're in Spain or if they're in, well, even in some parts of Ireland where they're speaking, especially like Gaelic
right? Yeah.
Right. But it comes across in English, and I've always wondered how does that work?
Cross communicate. Yeah, I don't know.
So it's worked a couple of different ways with me. Sometimes I can hear the language that they're speaking, and I won't know what they're saying. But the ghost or the earthbound ghost will convey emotions and actually show me a picture in my mind in order to get the meaning across.
Okay.
I did go on a paranormal investigation in Maryland, and there was an earthbound ghost in the home. And the spirit, the one who's crossed over, the spirit of the homeowner's father came in, and he was speaking to me, and I didn't understand what he was saying. And she was standing there with me, and I said, he's talking to me in a different language. I don't know what it was. And she said, oh, he's Greek. He only spoke Greek. And that's what he's probably speaking to you because he never learned English. And I said, well, he's making me feel like he's here to protect you from the earthbound ghost that's here. And he's just visiting. But I didn't understand him. So sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Depends on how they convey their emotions.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I do. I always laugh at especially the American investigators that go to these other countries and are like talking in like a southern accent or something. Yeah. These ancient, ghosts. I'm like, they're not gonna even understand these modern words or anything.
The colloquialisms and everything too. It's just like, I don't think they're gonna follow what you're putting down.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, so I've worked in radio for 20 years part time, and I grew up in the Boston area, and you can't not work in radio and have a Boston accent because nobody will understand you in the middle of the country.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And that's only here in our country. So
I know. Exactly. And it's amazing. It really is. Yeah. So kind of, I guess, pivoting to Ireland. Nicole is
I love Ireland and Scotland and Wales and England, all those, I'm very into the medieval castle stuff. So right. I read a lot about it. So I am very interested. I know you went to Christ Church Cathedral, and there's something there that ties to Bram Stoker. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was in Dublin.
In Dublin. Okay.
Yeah, so for those folks who don't know, Christ Church Cathedral, that cathedral has like a 1,000-year history. It was the first church that was constructed there, goes all the way back to the Vikings. I think it was 1030. So there had been several different buildings. I think the first one was made of wood, and then it was rebuilt a couple of times, and then finally, stone.
Mhm.
But that was my first ghost in Dublin, because we had joined a tour, a city tour, and as we were standing there, and the woman was talking about the Christ Church, there was somebody that died in the crypt underneath.
Okay.
Underneath the church, and he came through to me, and he showed me that he was laying down on the floor, and he had a sword, and I put a sketch in the book, and as it turned out, there's and he was supposed to be 14th, 15th century. That's what I got. The tour guide started telling us about a corpse in the crypt.
Oh,
So-
wow.
Wild.
So I can confirm that he is in fact still there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a way
Yeah.
of corroborating that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, she said some other things about rats down there too, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, go into that.
No.
So what is, and maybe I missed it, but what is the tie-in with Dracula?
Oh, so we didn't get there yet.
Okay, sorry.
So the tie-in is that Bram Stoker, the author, he used to attend Christchurch
Oh,
Cathedral,
Okay.
and he apparently he was pretty sickly as a kid, and he had blood transfusions. So
Mm.
think about that. Plus, if you look at the church inside and out, it's kind of creepy. I
Yeah.
mean, really. And he said there were notes that he left that said that he was influenced in creating Dracula's castle from that church.
Okay.
It's like a gothic
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
If I remember
It's
right.
got like
yeah.
kind of a Byzantine
Yeah.
kind of
It's huge.
lights and everything. Yeah.
So if you go to Ireland, I understand there is still a Bram Stoker festival in Dublin.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
No, I would have never put that together.
No, not in Ireland.
No, I don't know.
I would
Transylvania,
not
maybe.
either.
That's fascinating. It's interesting you say that you need a lot of blood transfusions. People always say you write what you know. It's just,
Well, yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
wow.
I didn't actually know that.
I didn't know that either. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I started researching the book for the book. So when I write these books that are Ghosts on a Medium's Vacation, they are a mix of history and hauntings, and the hauntings are all the ones that I encountered. So you will not find any of these experiences in anybody else's book. So I don't write about anybody else's experiences. These are all my experiences and the ghosts I met. And then when I come home, I try to prove their identity.
Okay.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Not only does it make it, because of course people know about a lot of the. I would never say a ghost is a run-of-the-mill ghost, but there's always the, the well-known ones, But okay, so then I've got to ask this question: what is the most haunted place in Ireland? If
At least according to
yeah,
you.
at least according to you, anyway. Yeah.
According to me, it is the Cork City Jail in Cork City in County Cork.
Okay.
There were a lot of people that died there. There were
Yeah.
people that were executed actually out front. Then I learned. That was kind of an introduction when I went there. It's now a museum, of course. It was a 19th century jail, and as soon as I walked into the museum, I noticed that there was nobody in the parking lot behind us. We were the only two there, plus the people that work there. And I, as soon as we walked through the threshold of the door, I heard all these men shouting. And I'm like, what in the world? There was nobody out there. So I went back outside and there was nobody there. It was residual voices. And they were like angry voices, just shouting. And I went to the ticket person and I said, did something ever happen out front? And she said yes. As a matter of fact, they used to hang prisoners right there out front in the courtyard. And
Wow.
yeah. So I heard the residual shouting.
Shouting, yeah.
And I just had gone through the front door. So that was the first episode.
Yeah, welcome. Jeez. What's interesting about that is, we've been to a few places, but the ones that really resonate and have just some very difficult hauntings are the prisons or like a sanitarium or something like that. But we live in Missouri, and we've been to Missouri State Penitentiary, and that place is, well, first of all, it's very well known for being extremely haunted, but
it's unnerving.
It's very unnerving, and you're right. You can almost, for me especially, when I go in there, it is I can smell sweat, and I can smell things that people haven't been there since the early '90s, I think.
I don't remember when it actually closed down, but
yeah. I always think that even with residual, that's where somebody lived and died more than likely some of the worst days of their lives. So it would make perfect sense.
So one of the things that I've learned by talking to people who have passed, and is that first of all, I want to back up for just a second. One of the key things that I've learned from the beginning, and this is the foundation of my first book, is that when we die, we make a choice. We're all the same energy with our memories and our personality and the knowledge of this life we lived, and then we have a choice. We can cross over into the light and become what I call a spirit. It's different. Or we choose to stay earthbound at a fixed location that we're aware of, that we know, or where we died. And that's what I call a ghost.
Okay.
So they're the same entity, but it's about location.
Okay.
The other thing that I found too is, energy-wise, is that spirit can go anywhere in the world at any time, any place. You can get a visit from your grandmother if you're in Puerto Rico on vacation. My dog Buzz came to us in Puerto Rico, by the way, which is why I brought up Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And he led me to a dog that looked exactly like him on the anniversary of his passing.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I picked a good place, Puerto Rico. That's a good place to go to.
So spirits can go anywhere, anytime. Ghosts, however, are trapped in the place that they chose. And sometimes I find that prisons and hospitals and battlefields are extremely haunted for a number of reasons. Hospitals, number one, because they wake up and they're confused as an energy entity. They don't know that they've died. And they linger too long. And I have an answer to that, by the way, about why that happens.
Yeah.
I finally figured it out. Two, people in prisons will linger there because when they die and they get that quick life review, they know they've done something wrong and they're afraid to cross over.
Okay. Yeah.
I also find that people who are very devout in their religion are also afraid to cross over. Because the slightest infraction that they make in life is something that they magnify in their own mind when they die.
Interesting.
As to send them to a bad place.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and there is no bad place. It's all about love and peace and acceptance on the other side. So, as for why I've learned ghosts can't cross over, it all goes back to the energy thing. Ghosts to me are like a battery. And if that battery sits out for a long period of time, the charge drops. It occurred to me that when we first die, we have enough energy so that we can open the doorway to the other side. Over time, ghosts lose that energy and they can't open that door anymore, even if they realize they want to cross over, which is why they need paranormal investigators to pool their emotional energy to help open that doorway.
Wow.
That's
that deep?
No, actually.
It actually makes so much sense, though.
Yeah, and
it does, like a battery draining. Because how many of these shows have we watched where they go and they're like, "I need help. I can't cross over." Constantly.
Yeah, and then you get the battery drains.
Like, why can't they do that?
That's wild.
How?
Yeah, and especially with energy, we've had a lot of folks on where we talk about frequency and things like that, where, and that pretty much rings through for every vertical of paranormal, right down to cryptids to UFOs, but also energy, even, and I said this a couple of episodes ago, that even Einstein himself said that he believes in ghosts because energy is a constant. It doesn't go away. So, no, that's incredibly fascinating. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. So then they feel like they get stuck.
Yeah.
Because that has happened several times where they've said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I even so there are other things that I'm able to finally explain using energy, and it's only because I'm a scientist, so I have to try and prove these things.
Sure.
So I don't know if you've heard an explanation for cold spots, but I've come up with one.
Please.
And that it's really all about energy. So temperature is an energy, but fast-moving molecules of air are warm air. It's like in the tropics.
Mm-hmm.
Slower-moving molecules of air are cooler air, like in the Arctic. Molecules move much slower. Right. So what happens is when a ghost wants to manifest or materialize, or even a spirit, if you will, what they do is they absorb the energy of motion of air molecules. And by doing so, they slow those molecules down, creating a cooler spot where they're trying to manifest.
Okay.
Yeah, scientifically that makes 100% sense.
Yes, it does, but I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, I've definitely been places where I felt those cold spots.
Yeah, I have too.
And then it's just it is odd that it's very typical and atypical to run into something similar to that.
So even your pets who have passed, when they visit from spirit, they can make you feel a cool spot. Like if you're laying in bed, you may feel like a cool spot on your leg or your feet. Like one foot may become cold. It's happened to me.
I always just thought it was her feet.
Yes.
But you have cold feet.
That sounds like a circulation issue to me. But even our pets can do that when we're laying in bed, especially.
That makes sense.
It does. Wow.
Yeah, I would imagine any living being that could manifest would almost have to use that same architecture because it doesn't change. It doesn't make any difference whether it's I guess for lack of better words, a beetle or a human. It's still a living sentient being that's going to have to utilize that same scientific architecture. So
yeah,
that's wild.
It is wild.
With and I guess maybe I'm asking this because of it being in Ireland, and I know that I don't know if Nicole's going to bring this up or not. Obviously, there's a very deep entrenched belief in fairies there, and it's a very culturally important. Do you find that first of all, did you experience anything like that, and do you find that that it is a very powerful force? And because obviously a lot of people in the U.S. have not really experienced that, or maybe they have, I don't know. But yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that. I may be jumping the gun a little on Nicole on that.
Yeah, you already stole my question.
Oh.
I was going to ask him if he encountered anything like that. Yeah.
Well, I have kind of a short answer, and the answer is actually no.
Really?
I did not. Yeah. But there was a lot of energy in a lot of different places. A lot of residual energy. And, one thing I always tell people is that when you go on any paranormal investigation, ghosts or entities, whatever, will choose who they want to talk to. Sometimes they will talk to me. Sometimes they will talk to somebody else. It's just like people. When you're in a group of people, you may feel like you want to go and say hello to somebody. Conversely, you stay away from somebody else. It's the same thing with ghosts because they're people too.
Right.
So
like attracted toward a certain energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That makes sense. I can see that.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad I'm making sense tonight. No, it's a Monday.
Well, I don't know if it's just the fact that you're making sense or that just we're understanding for on a Monday too. I mean,
okay,
that's good for us for sure. But sorry, I took
no, you're fine. I was just curious because and there's the understanding, like we talked to Mark about how like the older generations believed in the like the Dullahan, which is the headless horseman, and the banshee and all that stuff. But they're not finding it. Yeah, like today because there's less belief in it. Nobody's seeing it. And there's that understanding that sometimes when we believe in something so strongly, we kind of manifest it on our own, and then it's seen everywhere. So I was just kind of curious, because I know the fairies is still kind of a big thing over there. Maybe not the leprechauns and stuff as much, but the fairies are.
Well, the leprechauns now are more of a marketing thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Everybody loves the leprechauns. I mean, gosh, I eat Lucky Charms for breakfast every day. So
they're good.
I love them.
I mean,
I love them.
I think they're fantastic. I can't eat them anymore, but they're amazing.
All right, well, I'll have a bowl for you tomorrow.
Hey, that sounds good. Unfortunately, I'll probably have oatmeal or something like that. But,
hey, don't knock on the oatmeal.
Oatmeal's good. I'm not saying it's not, okay?
Put a marshmallow in it.
Yeah.
If I could only be so lucky.
There you go. Well, you mentioned banshees, and there actually is one chapter in my book where I actually do address a banshee, and that is Bunratty Castle in County Clare, because there was a very famous banshee there, and the legend is when you hear a banshee wail that someone's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have to confess, I just watched one of my favorite shows last night, Murder, She Wrote, and it took place in Ireland, and they had a banshee wailing. And
nice.
I was like, how very appropriate.
Right.
Awesome.
But yeah, there were two banshees recorded there at Bunratty Castle. The second one was 1649 by Lady Fanshawe, who said that she actually saw a woman in white with a ghostly or pale complexion and red hair outside of her window. So the first one was in 1014. It was it's named Aibhill, Aibhill. I'm probably not saying that right, but
that's how I would have done it.
Yeah, we don't know how they pronounce things.
Yeah. So if you want to look into banshees, Bunratty Castle is a place to do it.
Okay, I've heard of that place before. Yeah.
And there was something odd about Bunratty Castle too that I didn't expect. I noticed that when I went down on the first floor, I was standing outside of a room. Now it's all stone, of course, and I distinctly heard work being done in this room, and I looked in and there was nobody there. And I thought, okay. I heard it. So I stepped back out for a second, and I heard what sounded like people carrying wood and dropping wood and hammering, and I thought, okay, that's weird. And I sensed that there were horses in that room. So as it turned out, there was an army that stayed in there. The Royal Irish Constabulary turned that castle into a barracks in the mid-19th century. And because it's ground floor, they needed a stable, and that makes logical sense.
Wow.
So I found their stable without even knowing there was a stable.
Wow.
Jeez.
That was going to be my guess. Like, it was used as a stable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of crazy.
That's like almost like having your own dowsing rod to figure everything out. Wow, that's amazing.
So I'm very curious about New Grange.
Yes.
That is just every time I see that, and I know there's been lots of like scientific studies there about the way the light comes through the doorway, but what did you feel going there?
I felt a lot of heaviness, a lot of sad energy in New Grange. So for the people who don't know what New Grange is, it's a settlement. It's like a hill. It's a wall of rock covered with now grass, and it's really a tomb, and it predates the pyramids I found out by 400 years.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? It goes back to 3200 BC.
You know, that's no small thing. I'm sitting here trying to wrap my head around that. That's, wow. That is ancient as ancient can get. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that is interesting.
So it's in County Meath, which is north of Dublin. If I remember correctly, and it's in what's called the Boyne Valley, and the Boyne Valley is a beautiful, lush place, and there are rivers and lots of trees and grasses. It's really so. The here's what's interesting. There's an opposing feeling of energy. Outside, it's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's calm. Inside, it's heavy and oppressive. And that's because it's a tomb, really. They would bring their dead into there.
Wow.
Now, you asked about light coming into the tomb.
Yeah, there was something I read one time a long time ago that lined up, kind of like how they have with Stonehenge and everything, that it hit the other side, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, I can tell you.
Okay, yeah, good.
So on December 21st, the dawn of the winter solstice, it's the shortest day of the year up here in the northern hemisphere. And they built it so that and there's only one entrance. They built it so that a shaft of sunlight comes through the chamber door and lights up the walkway, the main aisle in the doorway. And it illuminates the inside chamber.
Okay.
For just that one day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I understand that people book years in advance to stand there December 21st and be able to go inside to see this. I don't think I'd want to be in northern, in Ireland in December 21st myself.
Right.
Yeah, outside at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside.
It's amazing that architects back in those days were able to nail something down that.
Oh, I know.
Precise.
That precise. And it's granted. Now we've got a lot of technology and we've advanced quite a bit. I get that, but it's amazing to me. Again, I almost get like this. Forgive me, but in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he puts the thing down and there's one spot where the staff. Anyway, long story short, it's just amazing to me that we always think of it as being more of a rudimentary. Especially in early times, that they didn't quite have that capability, but every single time, especially like a story that you said, I mean, we couldn't be any more wrong than that,
Yeah, the astronomers were amazing. And like I said, this was before the pyramids, and the ancient Egyptians did the same thing. 3200 BC. So when I think about history, I think of how much got lost in different places. Like even in the Renaissance, in Europe, so much of that information got lost, and then we had to rediscover it hundreds of years later.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so sad of what we'll never know because it's gone.
Yeah. And let that not be lost on our audience. Those of you who know math and know science and all these different things, the immense amount of mathematical calculation it takes to have that accuracy is just, it literally is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm wrapping my head around that a little bit.
I'm going to get a headache.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't want that. So one question I do have, you mentioned a lot with sketches, and it's interesting because you're not the only medium that I know that does that. I mean, Chris Fleming does that, and that's pretty famously he does that. But you put them in your books, and it included the two jails. I guess basically, how are you able to do that? I mean, what kind of gets you into that mind frame? And I have it in mind to ask him as well, Chris. But you kind of have to etch things out and sketch things out. Where do you get that capability to do that?
Oh, because I read comic books as a kid.
Oh, there you go. Fair enough.
So my dad taught me, really inspired me to read by buying me Superman and Batman comic books as a kid, and then I used to draw. I used to sketch them, and then I used to write my own stories based on those. And so I really owe the comic book industry a great deal of thanks, because they inspired me to become somewhat artistic.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important too to be able to sketch them out so that the reader will know what I'm looking at.
Right.
Also, the other thing too is that I've gone on paranormal investigations where I sketch these ghosts out that I encounter, and then the manager shows the homeowner the picture, and I've been batting 100 because they've said this is the ghost that they've seen in the house.
Wow.
So you can find those in my Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking book.
That's so cool.
We even had in one instance there was an infrared camera image of the ghost. Yes, and
That's amazing.
Wow.
yeah, and he looked just like I sketched, it's mind blowing to me.
Well, yeah, I can only imagine that. First of all, you get the immediate gratification of being able to go, okay, that's it. But then you go, I actually sketched that, and there it actually
Well, and
is.
especially if it's like a family member of this
Oh, yeah.
person. I mean, they're going to recognize him right away.
Wow.
That's great.
So
That's gonna
crazy.
help, yeah, immensely.
But one of the things that I like to do too is when I go on these vacations is I like to try and prove the identity of the people that I encountered, and that happened in Dromoland Castle.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the ghostess hostess that I met. So Dromoland is it's actually kind of near Bunratty Castle. It's in County Clare, and the castle was built in the 5th century, but it's been updated to be a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
So, and I knew nothing about it,
Mm-hmm.
but our travel agent across the pond vacation, they booked it for us for one night, and I thought, okay, cool. It'd be nice to stay in a castle.
Yeah.
So one night we were going to dinner, we were walking down past corridors in this castle, and I saw a woman, and she was dressed in a period garb from like the 1800s. And I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. They have the people that work here dressed up in period garb. And then
Right.
she walked through the door. She walked into a door and through it. And I thought,
Yikes.
okay, that was
That was not, yeah.
that was not her. That was not a
Wow.
real woman.
Those special effects are awesome.
Yeah. Jeez. So I
man.
sketched her out, and she was like in her 50s and 60s, and she had dark wavy hair, and she told me that she lived there in the 1800s and loved the castle, so she decided she would stay.
Wow.
When I got home, I started to research who it could possibly be, because she didn't give me a name. Sometimes they do give me a name. And I figured out that she was Charlotte O'Brien. She was married to one of the barons
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
That's awesome that you were actually able to find her, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those corroborated things that you go, I mean, just, first of all, having the experience alone is, I'm sure, quite cathartic in many different ways, but then there it is staring right back at you going, okay, there it is.
Yeah. Are you ever hesitant to go into, especially like in those countries, with these ancient like energies? Are you ever hesitant to go into some of these places, like of what you're going to find?
Well, to be honest with you, because I'm on vacation, I really don't even think about it.
Okay.
I don't think about it. I put my mind in a vacation mode, and I realize I shouldn't. I should be a little more cautious, but I'm at the point where it took so long to get on a vacation that I don't care.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to have some time for themselves,
sure.
so I get that.
Yeah, and you get
Yes.
to that point where you know that every single person that has ever lived has died. So at some point, it's going to happen. You just got to kind of
Yeah.
take that leap forward.
I mean, I would just think, like, especially like at the prison and, battlefields, places like that, where there's been all this death and, people just dying horrible deaths.
Yeah.
That is not something that I would want to pick up on. You know what I mean? Like, does it affect you physically ever? Like, when you walk into places like that, do you feel like what they feel or smell those times? Yeah, you do.
Yeah. One of the ways that they convey their presence and their identity is by sharing their pain of death.
Oh, jeez.
So I've been hit, punched, kicked, thrown downstairs, stabbed, shot.
Oh my
I felt a
gosh.
sword go through me when I was in England. All kinds of crazy stuff. And some of them have actually made me fall on my knees.
Wow.
Wow.
When I was in Tombstone, that happened too. I got shot in the throat. So
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna get to that.
Get to that.
Let's put a
Okay.
pin in that because that is something.
We're very curious.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because that's what I always think about. I'm like, it would be really, like, I would love to be able to do that, to be able to speak to the, and see the history. But then I think about that side of it, and I'm like, no, maybe I wouldn't, because that's the hard part and you can't just turn it off, like it's there.
And so a place like that has tragedy, associated with it.
Well, and they were so cruel back then. I mean,
yeah.
That's on like the history there as opposed to the States, which there was cruelty.
Oh,
I'm not going to say that there wasn't, but it's just like so much more time. I don't know.
So Nicole, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You said you were drawn to castles and time periods, different time periods, especially like England and Ireland and Scotland.
Yes.
Did you ever think that you had a past life in one of these places?
Yes, I think that all the time because it's so. I've always been drawn to it my entire life. I watch everything on it I can watch. I read everything I can read about it. I've never been there to any of them. I mean, it's definitely a bucket list thing, but I want it so bad.
I'll never get her back home. But,
So the reason I ask that is because there is a chapter in my Ireland book where my husband had a past life experience come true.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's always been fascinated by medieval England, the Tudor period, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Henry VIII.
Yes.
Fascinated by it. I knew nothing about it. When we went to England, I knew nothing. We went to all these Tudor places, and then I wound up talking to Tudor-era ghosts, which was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And one of them gave me a tour of his boyhood castle.
Wow.
Which was freaky, but I proved who it was. But I asked you about past life experiences because if you are drawn to a place and you've never been there before, the chances are that you lived there before at a certain time. Have you had a regression done before?
I have not. I'm seriously considering it though. We've actually just spoke to a past life regressionist, and so I'm really considering doing it.
Yeah, I'm right where you're headed, Rob. I'm with you when it comes to her because I definitely feel that.
Well, coincidentally, my genealogy, I've got a lot of blood that comes from all those areas as well. So I just always put it up to just my ancestry. Like I'm just really into my ancestry, but it feels a little bit more than that.
Trust me when I tell you it is more than that. The same thing happened to me in Tombstone. I had a past life experience that I realized later, and we can get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But when we went to so Tom had gone to a past life regressionist, and I convinced him to do so because of the Tudor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was under, he described living in a home, a one room home with a white exterior and a thatched roof, and he described what was inside, like a thatched bed and a pot and something else. Well, when we went to the Dingle Peninsula, there was a museum there, and it was near the Great Blasket Island. That's a big tourist attraction. It's known as the Sleeping Giant Island because it looks like a sleeping giant on the side of the island. So we went there, and we went into this museum. The museum is where Tom's past life came flooding back to him because in the museum they had a reconstructed home from the Tudor period that was on Ireland, and it was exactly as he described it.
Jeez.
And he went into that reconstruction and he was just dumbfounded.
Just like hit him.
Yeah, he said,
Yeah.
This was what my house looked like.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
so
awesome.
that told us that he lived in Ireland, in that region, and he would go to England.
Okay.
So perhaps he was a fisherman, perhaps he was something, with trade and so forth. But
jeez,
yeah,
and that was such a, such a tumultuous time too. There was so much, for some reason I always just think of that show you had me watch, that Tudor show, the Officer Head, yeah. But obviously, like with Anne Boleyn in the London Tower and stuff like that, it's just talk about a eye opener to walk you back into that kind of life.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was pretty gruesome.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I think I'm going to.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay, well, before you go to England, I urge you to read my Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation book, because you can go to all these places and see if you can encounter them.
Okay.
Well, on that, you have 2 other books in the traveling series.
Yeah, he's got the England and Ireland.
So it's England, Ireland, and...
The Birdcage Theater of Tombstone, Arizona.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get to that here in a second. Yeah. But,
we're safe.
Yeah, that's the icing on top for me anyway.
Okay.
But, but yeah, I mean, I guess we can kind of head that direction.
Let's just go there.
Let's go there.
Okay.
So, I had said I'm from Tucson, and,
yes,
I've been to Tombstone. I couldn't even enumerate throughout my life.
I've been there several times.
Yeah, when we go to visit my family, we go there quite often. In fact, I think we're going in October, so I'm sure we'll make a stop. That town, especially being a sensitive person, is like jumping into a pool that it's electrified, that is just, it's just, you're swimming constantly in it. I'm beyond, I guess, interested in what you have to share about that.
Well, so in 1993, I saw the movie Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, and that something looked really oddly familiar to me. And I thought, why does that look familiar? I don't know. So the next year, I planned a trip. I went out with a good friend of mine, and I convinced him to see the town in a very fun way. We didn't know anything about the town, other than what was in the movie, which was filmed not in the town.
Nope.
No, it's not.
It was in a movie lot.
Yep.
So, so I dressed up as Wyatt Earp, and he dressed up as Doc Holliday, and that's the way we walked through the town.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah,
it was fun. As a matter of fact, if you look at the cover of the book, that's a picture of me in 1994 dressed up as Wyatt Earp outside of the Birdcage Theater.
Oh, that's so cool.
There is a time where they do that called Eldorado Days.
Were you there for that, or it was just a separate time?
No, it was a different time.
Okay.
So, so this was 1994. This was before the internet. This was before cell phones. This is, you had a paper map of Arizona and Tombstone was a dot on it.
Right. Yeah.
That was it. So we had no information whatsoever. So I didn't know anything about festivals or anything. There was no way to get that information. I know it seems odd to people, who are like 20 listening to this.
I know.
Google
it's funny too, because we're Generation X Paranormal, so obviously I'm 50 in a couple of weeks, and I remember all this stuff, but I keep forgetting that there is a portion of our audience that has no idea what.
How did you know when to meet someone if you didn't have your phone on you?
That's our problem, but
Exactly. So think of that as 1994, and in 1994, my abilities had not reawakened because my puppy Buzz didn't pass until 2005. So when I went to visit, there were 2 weird things that happened. Number one, I wound up taking a picture of the mural that hangs in the lobby of Fatima, who is a performer that performed in the 1880s. And when I got home and I had the film developed. Yes, I had film developed. Kids. There was the face of the face of an actor came out in the middle of the picture, and I wasn't even paying attention to it, and I mailed it to Billy Hunley, who manages the Birdcage Theater. He did back then, he still does now, and he called me and he said, "Rob, look at this picture." you captured the face of the actor that I see walking across the stage sometimes at night when I close up.
Wow.
So that's in the book. But
That's so cool.
so in 2019, I went back because they were offering ghost tours, and I asked a friend of mine who lived in Phoenix to come with me, and he said he's never had a paranormal experience, doesn't know if he believes in it. Well, I'll tell you what, he walked out of there after seeing 2 ghosts and taking a picture of one of them, that's also in the book, believing.
Oh, yeah.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Thank you. But I had my past life experience there too, in Tombstone, and this was back in 1994 when I wasn't even aware that it was a past life experience. And this is how you know. So I went to Tombstone. We pulled in the parking lot at the very end of town near the birdcage. We started walking to town. When we got in front of the birdcage, a tourist came up to me and said, "Hey guys, do you know how I can get to the courthouse?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Yeah, sure. You go down that way. You go down this Allen Street, 2 blocks. You take a left. You go down 1 block. You take a right, and then it's on your left hand side." Mm-hmm. And my friend looked at me and he said, "What did you just say?" He said, "We've never been here." What? Wow. What the hell are you giving this guy bum directions for? And I was like, I don't know. I just knew where it was. And sure enough, we walked down there and followed my directions, and that's where it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know that I lived in Tombstone in the 1800s, the 1880s.
Wow.
And I had a past life regression, and found out I was a minor. Okay. And I had a hound dog, which feeds into my affinity for love of dogs and all kinds of things. So if you've been to a place and it looks eerily familiar, you've lived there before.
Yeah. I've definitely experienced that. And man, talk about being a minor in the 1800s in Tombstone. Man, that's a rough life. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know,
I'm curious real quick. Did you go down to the Boot Hill graveyard and walk around?
I did. Yeah.
I wonder if you're there.
Oh,
your past life.
I don't know. I wasn't even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're not less more. I mean that.
Right.
That's true.
He died with 4 slugs from a 44.
44. Yep.
No less, no more.
Yeah.
Love that Tombstone.
That's the best. Well, Rob, honestly, I think we could probably talk for another 17 hours if we really could.
No
oh gosh.
I know our audience is definitely going to want to be able to find how to get a hold of you, and obviously
get your books at least.
Books for sure. Yeah. If you could kind of just tell our audience where to reach out to you, kind of all the places they can pick up your books and so on and so forth.
Sure. They're all on Amazon, and that's where you'll find them. And they're in 3 formats to make it easier to read. 1, paperback. 2, Kindle book. 3, audio book if you don't want to read. Just drive and listen. But you can't see, the downside of that is you can't see the sketches and stuff like that. The upside of reading a Kindle book is because in my latest one, Ireland, I put in links to little videos that I made in each spot.
Oh,
so you can click the video link and you can see a 30-second or 60-second report of my experience right after it happened.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're all on Amazon. Just type in Gutro and they'll come up. And my website is robgutro.com. For people who don't know how to spell my last name because it's a massacred French name, just type in petspirits.com. It goes to the same place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hold on, I think I need a second from that one. Pretty good.
Well, everybody puts a W on the end or an H in the middle of it, and I'm like, no, it's 5 letters.
That's
don't make it complicated. Right.
Buy that domain and point it over there, and we're good.
So yeah.
Oh well, listen. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
it was amazing,
fascinating.
And hopefully, maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it. I'd love to come back and talk to you guys more about the birdcage and about England because of your interest in England.
Let's plan that for
Yeah,
sure.
we'll do
That's
that.
great. Well, again, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and give you back some time in the evening, and then I'm going to wrap my head around some of the stuff we talked about because that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But
Awesome. I love talking to you both. You truly made my day.
awesome.
Oh, great.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, and we'll talk again.
Okay. Thank you.
He's a lot of fun.
He was. I'm excited to talk to him again, actually.
Yeah, we definitely need to link up with him again, especially with Tombstone, because I could talk about Tombstone for
Well,
probably
we've
an
talked
entire
about it
season.
several times.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
can talk about, the British Isles
Yeah.
forever and ever. So
That's for sure. Absolutely. But yeah, what'd you think?
very kind, nice man.
Yeah.
And just, he really explained some things that I've never really thought about before.
For sure.
It does make sense
Yeah.
about the cold spots,
Yeah.
about why they get stuck or why they don't move on immediately. I always wondered that, like, why, if you're in prison somewhere and you're suffering and you die, you stay there. It
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
make sense to me. But if you're confused, it makes sense. But
Yeah.
the longer they linger, the more they can't move, and that's why they're so miserable. It's a sad thought as
It
well.
is. Yeah, every time we go to one of those, I always think, gosh, if you're going to be stuck somewhere, this would be the worst place.
Horrible place.
Now, some people probably deserve it, but still,
Yeah.
really bad people.
But does that mean you have to forever suffer?
Well, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not on that bandwagon necessarily.
I mean, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we always have our own opinion, and of course, you guys have yours. So, but yeah. Now I know there's some, like you said, there was some places you're going to reach out, or that he said to reach out to buy his books and stuff. But
Yeah, but I wanted to list all the ones that he has, in case we didn't go over those, so that you can look for them. But he's got several, so I'm going to list them out here. So
Okay.
we got Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking, Kindred Spirits, How a Medium Befriended a Spirit, Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead, and Pets and the Afterlife 1, 2, and 3. So there's 3 books in that series. Ghosts and Spirits, and then Ghosts of the Birdcage Theater on a Medium's Vacation,
so cool.
and the latest one, which is Ghosts of Ireland,
Yeah.
which I'm going to pick up a few of these and read them.
I'm reading that Birdcage one.
Mm-hmm. And he's got a couple websites. So one is www.robgutro.com, and the other one is www.petspirits.com.
I still find it funny that you said that. All right. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much again. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.